And we are working our way through The Imitation of Christ, a book by Thomas à Kempis, or one of his disciples. They're not real sure who wrote the book. And we're on the chapter saying, put all of your hope in God alone, God and God alone. Take refuge in the divine alone. And this is a very important lesson. And he's going through that actually in this chapter, kind of talking about the only thing that's real in this world is that which is unchanging. And the only thing that is unchanging is the I am, your sense of being, the moment that you exist in eternally, this eternal moment that has no beginning or end, and your inner self, that image of God that is within you, that maintains your sense of I, regardless of the size and shape of your body and the condition and circumstance of your mind. You always know who I is within, and that is the unchanging presence of the image of God. And he continues on in this chapter. He was talking earlier about don't take refuge in powerful people, don't take refuge in circumstances, just don't count on anything in this material world to be your stability. That's that whole point of that parable that Jesus talks about, where the wise man who builds his house on the rock versus the foolish man who builds on the sand. The sand is the changing, this world of constant change, constant unrepeated change. So don't build your life and the value of your life on things that change. Build your life on the principles that do not change, the principles of pure love and pure wisdom in your being. And if you build a life on that and you have those elements as your motivation, as your inspiration for your action, your life will be fulfilling. It will be a life of a happy human being. Um, it's when we don't know who we are, when we think that we are the body and its conditions and the mind and its conditions, and then we start depending on the things of body and mind, having a good job, having a good income, having a beautiful wife, a handsome husband, a certain number of kids and a dog and a house that's big enough to impress at least the people we're interested in impressing, and a nice car to be in so people see that we can afford a nice car. If you build your life on those things, it's just a constant workhorse. There's no rest in that. You buy that car, and as soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses $5,000 in value, and that will continue to decline until you get a new one. And the same thing with your house. The same thing with everything. And so that's what he says, don't build on anything but that within the shrine of your own heart. That is the rock. That is the unchanging absolute. So he goes on here in verse 4. He says, everything that seems to be for our peace and happiness in this world is really nothing and contributes nothing to our joy if you are absent, meaning if God is not at the center of it. Right. And in this, it's helpful to constantly remember that God, a synonym for God, is love. And so when we're talking about, the life in this world, there's absolutely nothing here if love is removed, if the presence is removed, if God is removed. There's nothing that gives anything value. If this world is material, that can get dark very, very quickly. There's no inherent value in that. Everything dies, everything decays, everything finishes. And to maintain a sense of optimism or a sense of purpose within those parameters is very difficult. And I think most of us are schooled in that because we've at least started life, with the dream of what we were going to be or what we were going to do or what we were going to accomplish or achieve. And, when you get to midlife and you kind of look around at what your job does and what you've settled for and where your life is at, then, you start going through that midlife crisis. Like, is this really it? I remember running around my cubicle maze in the human resources department where I was the IT guy for years in the 90s. And I can remember that midlife crisis of just looking around at what I had become and comparing that to my childhood dreams and ideas. I was like, wow, is this really all there is? And it really put me into a tailspin, a good tailspin, because it ultimately led me on a search, on a real quest that I think found the meaning of life. I think for me anyway, found the one most important thing. Anyway, the condition of my life has gotten consistently better over the years that I have been working on it. And so he's saying, everything in this world that looks like it's there to make you happy, that looks like it's there to give you peace, there's really nothing there. There's nothing to stand on. Before you even get your foot on it, it will change its nature. There is no security to be found in this world of constant change. If God is absent, if love is not with you, if love is not within you, then you don't have any of that peace. You don't have any of that contentment, because that's the value in knowing who you are. If you know that you are Satchitananda, that you are love, wisdom, and being, then you know that those things are the things that you should seek and pursue. And by pursuing love and pursuing wisdom and peace in your being, that is what fills us. That's what makes us happy. That's what makes us joyful. And it's easily tested. you know, if you want to end a depression, one of the best ways to end a depression is to go and serve somebody. If you're feeling depressed and unmotivated, go make some sandwiches and go down to some part of town where you can hand them out to people, or take $5 and go for a walk and look for somebody to spend it on. You find that if you do acts of service like that, random acts of kindness, that bumper sticker, that's wonderful. That's the best way in the world to lift yourself out of a slump, out of a darkness, and to live a life that's built on that value is really the only way toward having a life that's worthwhile, that will seem worthwhile to you in the end, when you lay there kind of surveying these years on earth. You, Lord, are the end of all good things, the sublimity of life, the depth of all wisdom that can be spoken. Therefore, to trust in you above all else is the greatest comfort that your servants can have. Yes, and again, so just thinking of that as love. Love is the end of all good things. It is what makes all good things good, is love. The sublimity of life, those things that you've enjoyed the most in life, companionship with a good friend, an embrace with a lover. These are all symbols of the love that God is. And it is that which makes our life meaningful. You can look at it, you can see that in every form of art that we have. Love is at the center of it. All of the novels, all of the poems, all of the songs, they're all singing about love, and the pain of love broken, the longing for love fulfilled, the beauty of a love experienced. All of these machinations and contortions of the different ways that love can be expressed are really at the heart of all of our creative endeavors. And so you can see very quickly what is important in life if you really start discerning, start paying attention, start being that witness and seeing things as they are. So you, Lord, are the end of all good things, the sublimity of life, the depth of all wisdom that can be spoken. Therefore, to trust in you above all else is the greatest comfort your servants can have. Right. And so if you're looking for life that's got a sense of comfort to it, a sense of completeness to it, then this pursuit of love, wisdom through being is the only way, really, for that. And you're welcome to try anything else. That's not the problem. You just have to go through the suffering of it, working it out little by little as you go. To you, O Lord, the Father of mercy, I raise my eyes, and in you alone, my God, I put my trust. Bless and sanctify my soul with your heavenly benediction. May it become a holy place where you may dwell. So this is the pursuit of spiritual life right here. As we've mentioned, the Rig Veda lays it out. Jesus lays it out in the New Testament. It's everywhere in the world scriptures that this body is the original temple of God, and within it is placed the beloved image of God. And so our spiritual practice is how we sanctify that shrine within, so that we carry our own holiness with us. We carry our own sacredness within us. We carry our own atmosphere of holiness within us. And if you dedicate yourself to your practice, to doing your japam, to meditating on God, singing the names and the glories of the beloved, and setting your eyes on love itself and practicing that love and seeing that love in everyone, then you carry with you that sacredness of a temple where you can find peace, where you can find solace, where you can find meaning within your very self. And that is why freedom is the watchword for the Vedantist, because in that freedom, you are taking delight in what you are, the image of God. You are taking delight in the essence of self, which is permanent and within you and available to you always. So you remove that slavery. You remove that bondage of having to search and serve something outside of yourself in order to maintain a happiness, in order to maintain a contentment in the world of change. So bless and sanctify my soul with your heavenly benediction. May it become a holy place where you may dwell, the place of your eternal glory. Yes, the place where you sing the name of God and God manifests within you in those wonderful indications of love. Let nothing be found in this temple that may offend the eyes of your divine majesty. Right? So let nothing in me block me or remove my attention from you always. May I not be distracted by the material things of the world, the enjoyments of the senses and the mind, but may I stay in the presence of your steadily flowing love, your constantly present love, your love that doesn't have a requirement of me, does not have a condition, right? So let nothing cover your eyes, which in a sense means may I always be aware of your presence within. And that's the aim and goal of our spiritual practice. Look down upon your poor servant, Lord, exiled in the land of the shadow of death, and according to the greatness of your goodness and your manifold mercies, graciously hear my prayer. So look how he describes this world. He said, exiled in the land of the shadow of death, right? We're in the land of Yama, the king of death. He rules supreme here. Every single living being in this universe, in this waking world of ours, has to pay homage to death. We all have to pass through those gates, right? And we pass through them because of our identity with body mind. So we see the body decaying and we say, I'm decaying. We see the body growing old, we say, I'm growing old. We see the mind getting forgetful, and we say, I get forgetful, because we haven't maintained that boundary, that knowledge, I'm spirit. This body mind is a manifestation of me that I use to sing my love songs to God, but it is not the thing itself. I am not the body and I am not the mind. I'm spirit, right? And the things of sin, those things that serve body and mind, are the things that cause us to attach to body and mind. The pleasures of the senses, the way things taste, the way things smell, the way things feel. These are things that we become enslaved to because they're pleasant, uh, albeit very short-lived, but they are pleasant, and so they keep our attention. Because if we're living in service to the body and mind, we're not enjoying that inner well of love that we have, because our attention is being pulled outward into the changing world, and that constant flow of change keeps us distracted by the world, keeps us entertained, and it's very difficult to find our way back to that silent, transcendent place within, where the bliss is constant and flowing. So look down upon your servant, exiled in the land of the shadow of death. You can also understand that the shadow of the death is not just in all things dying, but in all things ending. That everything is always in a constant cycle of growth, sustenance, or decay. There's nothing that just is, except the isness itself. And that's within you. In the land of the shadow of death, and according to the greatness of your goodness, according to the greatness of your love. This is why spiritual life has no limit, because it's about the love of the divine. It's about divine love and unconditioned love that has no bottom. You will never finish falling in love with love in its pure form. It is a forever endeavor of fulfillment. According to the greatness of your goodness and your manifold mercies, right? Because of those manifold mercies, this is where we find our confidence in the light of constant change. This is where we find our stability. The one thing we can always count on is the love and the mercy, the grace of the beloved. And when we start out with that, of course, in spiritual life as an idea, right? And we look for it in the mind for many, many years. And then usually by accident or just by grace, something is manifested that's deeper, something that makes us understand there's a touch of this beyond mind that has nothing to do with thought, nothing to do with senses or emotions at all, that there is something quietly, infinitely peaceful at rest within us that takes us some time to find. And that is the result of these manifold mercies, the unlagging sense of grace, the unconditioned nature of divine love allows us to have our prayers heard, right? Of course, all of our prayers are always heard, but we take on the condition of our mind. The mind holds our karma. And so if we're misbehaving or if we're following our vices or being selfish or living a life of those ways, we're caught up in the turmoil of that. And we don't have a sense of the presence within us. We don't have a sense of a right, we used to use this word a lot in the Church of Christ, the right relationship with God, because we're distracted from it and we're pulled out of it. And, our guilt is actually activated. Our shame is activated, and we feel a little reticence about placing ourselves in that divine light. So he cries out, he says, defend and preserve my soul amid the many dangers of this corruptible life, right? Corruptible means decayable, endable life, this life in the temporary. So please defend and preserve my soul, keep my identity strong as spirit. Keep my integrity as spirit alive within myself. Keep my awareness of your presence, of this unconditioned love, of this endless mercy, this grace. Help me to keep that at the center of my experience of the day, not to have the changing world be my experience of the day, but to have my shrine, my inner strength, my inner temple, to be my peace, to be my experience of the day. So defend and preserve my soul amid the many dangers of this corruptible life, and direct me by your grace along the path of peace to the land of everlasting light, right? That land of everlasting light, the light of awareness, the light of love, right? Both of those being equivalents. That you are the light that manifests this world. The light of your awareness is what is returned to you with all of the information for the senses and for the mind. And so when you come to know yourself as the light of the world, as the light of consciousness, as the light of awareness, as the light of love, then you are in the world of everlasting light. There is no darkness within you whatsoever. Egoism is the only thing that can block that light of awareness, that can dull you into a life of habit and materialism. And so we're begging God, praying to God, knowing that it's not our achievement that takes us out of that, but it is the grace of God that leads us along this path of peace, finding that presence within. Right? Okay, we're going to jump into a new book, Book 4, on the Blessed Sacrament and the Devout Exhortations for Holy Communion. And it starts off just with some verses here. The voice of Christ. Come to me, all of you who are weary and overburdened, and I will give you rest. Right. So this is the divine presence speaking from within, the voice of the word, the voice of Christ, the voice of the Buddha, the voice of Rama, the voice of God in his purest form manifested. Come to me, all you who are weary, tired of the constant machinations of change, the constant, insecurities and the constant shifting of everything, unable to find our support. Come to me, and I will give you rest. The bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. Take this and eat. This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Right. And so that's constantly bringing us back to that remembrance, that trust in grace, that trust in love, establishing our sense of self on those unchanging, countable aspects there. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood, who takes part in my life, takes part in my reciprocal love, that my guaranteed love that is there for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood dwells in me, and I dwell in him. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. So this brings on that notion that when our ego is broken, when we escape our egoism, we enter into the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ, or the mind of the beloved, the mind of God, is our natural state. We dwell in that pure state when egoism is broken. And egoism is broken when we share in the life of the incarnations, the life of the Buddha, of the Rama, of Jesus, that when we participate in those lives and in what is important in those lives, keeping love, compassion, light, service at the center of our being, then we recover our sense of self, our sense of natural self. In chapter 1, the great reverence with which Christ should be received. A disciple is talking. These are your words, O Christ, who are eternal truth, although they have not all been uttered at the same time, nor written in one same place. Nevertheless, they are your words, and they express the truth. That is why I receive them with gratitude and with faith. Right, and this entire world actually is this expression of truth. I always talk about John, the first chapter, because it's a very profound and very important chapter. And in there, it tells you that word, the same thing that Jesus is the purest form of, that Buddha is the purest form of, that Rama is the purest form of, that word is what has created everything. And so if you see this world as it is, you see grace, you see love, you see its lack of condition, you see its eternal nature in everything that dances in front of you. The world becomes scripture. The world becomes the voice of the beloved. And you can see it, when you misbehave, you feel it. When you're angry with your best friend, you feel it. You feel that contraction. When you've had a fight with your parents, you feel that contraction. When you've stolen something from the grocery store, you feel that contraction. And you understand that this universe is God, and that you can't live a life of selfishness without knowing, without feeling, without sensing, without understanding that you're on the wrong path. If you do that, it causes pain, it causes suffering. And so by taking the alleviation of suffering as a guide, which is what Buddha did really to put many of his teachings together, that alleviation of suffering, and which was also a big part of the path of Jnana Yoga, that our nature is to alleviate suffering. And so if we pay attention and begin to alleviate the things in our life that cause suffering, we will move toward God, toward the divine. And the universe is created that way. The universe is created in such a way that you will never find your comfort here. because Mother doesn't want you to have your comfort here. The divine wants you to have your comfort in that divine principle alone, the love and wisdom of being. They are your words. You have spoken them, but they are mine also because you have given them for my salvation. I eagerly receive them from your mouth, and that they may be permanently implanted in my heart. Right? And they have already been permanently implanted in all of our hearts. That's the image of God that's placed within us. What we have to do is to stop leading ourselves away from them. Stop being interested in the thrills of the five, as I call them, the five senses, all the combinations of five that we can enjoy in this world. Every experience you can have, no matter how interesting or creative it is just a compilation of the five senses, another combination of the five. And how many of those combinations do you need before you realize the nature of them? That they all involve slavery. They all involve serving something outside of yourself, begging that something for pleasure, begging that something for some contentment. Right. And so look at it and say, well, God, how long am I going to stay so infatuated with the combinations of five? That's all they are. There's just five things there in different degrees, added together, mixed together in all the different combinations, but that's all it will ever be. And all of them will be incredibly temporary, incredibly short-lived. And none of them add up. Just because you keep experiencing that pleasure, it doesn't accumulate. You can't save up some of that pleasure for later. It's always spent the moment it's experienced, and then it's gone, leaving you without it. And that's the nature of the world. That's why he started the chapter by saying, there's nothing in this world, no, as good as it may seem, there's nothing here where you can hang your hat, where you can find your security. These words are full of tenderness and gentleness, and they give me courage, but I am terrified by my sins, and my unclean conscience prevents me from coming near so great a mystery. You see, there's our problem. We identify with the conditions of body and mind, and we take them on and with a sense of responsibility. That's what attachment is. And we identify with those things. And so we become terrified of these things because we've realized by paying attention that all of the suffering in our life has become because of these things. When we leave the presence of the beloved within and reach out into the senses and try and find a good time out there in whatever event, we have felt that pain. We have felt that isolation. We have felt that loneliness, that disconnection. And of course, it brings a sense of fear or a sense of, oh gosh, I have to be careful. I'm terrified by my sins and my unclean conscience, which means I've made wrong choices, even deliberately made wrong choices through habit or through a vain hope that, oh, maybe this time it will give me something, right? We've created an unclean conscience, which does what? It prevents me from coming near. I can't draw to an intimacy with God if my conscience isn't clear, right? So we clear our conscience in two ways. One, we discern, we dispassion, and we renounce, right? That's one aspect that's very important. That has to be there. And then we just constantly cling to grace, constantly cling to grace. Whatever isn't accomplished by our effort is more than covered by grace. And so we never have to sit there and calculate out where we stand with God. We always have the option of throwing ourselves into grace, throwing ourselves into love. And if we bow down before Mother, before the divine, in that attitude, all of the scriptures say that Mother runs to us to pick us up, runs to us to embrace us. That's the message of the Christ. It's the message of the Buddha. It's the message of Rama, the message of the Divine Mother. These words are full of tenderness and gentleness. They give me courage. I'm terrified of my sins, and my unclean conscience prevents me from coming near so great a mystery. Your loving words invite me, but I am weighed down by my numerous offenses. right? And this is true. And if you keep your eyes on your numerous offenses, that's still going to be true. Faith has to be your antidote. And that's the biggest and most difficult part of spiritual life, I can confidently say, is having enough faith to believe that a love without condition exists and that it belongs to you and it is in your favor. That is the hardest thing in spiritual life to believe, that you, exactly as you are, with all of your pluses and your minuses, can lay yourself down in confidence before the beloved because of the beloved's grace and because of the beloved's love for you. Even if you are missing in every aspect yourself. We see that again with the prostitutes in Jesus's life and Girish Ghosh in the life of Ramakrishna and the prostitutes in Buddha's life. Also, no matter what their conditions were, no matter what their lives were like, they found transcendence in the grace of the Great One, of the incarnation. You tell me to come to you with confidence. If I desire to have a share in your life and to receive the food of immortality, if I want to attain everlasting life and glory, come, you say, come to me, all of you who are weary and overburdened, and I will give you rest. There's your promise. Test it. Step into it. Find out. You won't be disappointed. This is the way. These words are heartening to the ear of a sinner. To think that you, my Lord and my God, actually invite the poor and needy to the communion of your most sacred body. But who am I, O Lord, to dare to approach you? You see, this is the wrong question, because you are nobody. You actually end up not even existing as a separate thing from God. Right? So the question is not, who am I that I can approach this blinding light of perfection? Your question is, who are you that you are able to invite me and fill me with light, regardless of my condition? Right? Our thoughts are always about God. To think about yourself, even in the sense of like, I'm a sinner or I'm broken or God, I need your love. Thoughts about the self are inherently selfish and will build egoism. You can build an ego out of self-hatred. You can build an ego out of shame. You can build an ego out of false humility, right? Because those things prevent you from drawing near to God. And if you're not drawing near to God, you're becoming more and more separate, more and more locked up in your own karmic world. And so don't ask who you are. That's not the question. Ask, who is this God? Who is this life, this incarnation? Who is this that has given so much and promised that he would give infinitely more if it was helpful, right? But who am I, Lord, to dare to approach you, you whom the heaven of heavens cannot attain? Yet you say to me, come to me, all of you, right? So we always come back to that. If it couldn't happen, why the invitation? If God wasn't willing, why the constant invitation? Come right now. I don't care what you just finished doing. I don't care what you just finished thinking. I don't care what your condition is. In this moment, come. This moment is sacred, and I am here, right? What is the meaning of this humble compassion and so friendly an invitation? Since I am unaware of any good in myself and have so often grievously offended you, how can I receive you under my roof? Why, the very angels and archangels stand in awe of you. The saints and the just, they tremble, and still you say, come to me, all of you. Lord, how could I possibly believe this if you had not said these words? And how could I possibly venture near you unless you had commanded it? Right? So you see, our confidence, our trust, our purity, our wholeness, our worthiness, all lay in God's hands. None of it lays in our hands. None of it. The only thing that lays in our hands is surrender, to lay down before the beloved. That's it. That is all you can do. That is all you can offer. Get out of the way, let your ego die, so that that which is beautiful in you can shine without interruption, right? So that that which is lovely in you, the name of God, that fire of love, that infinite immortality of the moment. That just man, Noah, toiled for 100 years to build the ark so that he and a remnant might be saved. How then can I, in just 1 hour, prepare myself to receive the creator of the world with due reverence? Your great servant and special friend Moses made an ark of imperishable wood, overlaying it with purest gold to place the tables of the law in it, the tablets of the law in it. Then how shall I, a corrupt and perishable creature, dare so lightly to receive the maker of the law and the giver of life, right? Well, we do that by understanding that we are not corrupt and perishable, right? As long as we're thinking ourselves as body mind, there is no way to get there. He's absolutely right. The body and the mind will never let you forget your lukewarmness, your lack of performance, your lack of intensity. The mind and body will always condemn you, right? Because they come from a world of constant change where nothing is perfect. No ideals exist in the manifested world. All ideals exist in the world of spirit. It took 7 years for Solomon, the wisest of Israel's kings, to build a resplendent temple for the worship of your name, the dedication of which was celebrated for 8 days. 1,000 peace offerings were sacrificed, and with great solemnity and rejoicing, and accompanied by the sound of trumpets, the Ark of the Covenant was carried in solemn procession to the place prepared for it. And I, the most miserable, the poorest of human beings, who can scarcely spend one devout half hour, shall I bring you into my house? If only I could spend just 1/2 hour as I ought, you know. So yes, this is important. We have to come to this understanding. We as an ego self have nothing to bring. There is nothing we can do. We can never be good enough at our practice. We can never be deep enough in our meditations. We can never be pure enough in our renunciation for these things. There will always be the composite of the world in us somehow, some way, right? But what does it do? It does exactly what he says here. Oh, if I could spend just 1/2 hour as I ought, right? If I could just have 1 hour of purity, or 1/2 hour of purity where I was myself, where there was no body mind, no sand mixed in with the pure love and the pure wisdom and the pure being of the I, right? Of the I am, right? And so our imperfection makes us long, right? Makes us long and search out the grace of God. So that's its role, right? To keep us humble, to keep us from investing in egoism. We keep an honest view of ourselves constantly, and we constantly surrender and accept love, trust love, trust love, trust love, right? Oh my God, how much did those great persons of the Old Testament do to please you? Well, not to mention how much did they do to displease you? It's like, oh God. You read that Old Testament, and they go from being slapped to being celebrated, to being slapped to being celebrated, to being slapped to being celebrated. you look at that journey of the Israelites in their spiritual life. My God, it's from height to depth, height to depth, height to depth, just back and forth and back and forth. God's backhanding them one moment and then feeding them manna the next moment, backhanding them the next moment, feeding them manna the next moment. They're just constantly getting rebellious, constantly turning the wrong direction. But look at that patience. You can read the book of Exodus as a map for living spiritual life. You can follow that book and understand, yes, through all of that, they walked a grand circle for 40 years. They walked a circle. I mean, if you look at it on the map, the Jews walked in a circle for 40 years, God waiting to kill off all of those who had been faithless in the beginning, who were no longer worthy of attaining the promised land, right? And so they walk in this big circle. So it takes them 40 years, and then the remnant is allowed to enter into the promised land. And so in our spiritual life, it's like that. What wears out, though? The unworthy part of us wears out, right? By our constantly turning to God, by our constantly putting our eyes back on the beloved. What wears out? That part of us that is body mind, that does not enter the kingdom, right? That doesn't come to the promised land. Spirit comes to the promised land. Spirit knows its way, and spirit is always visible. I just turned. How much did those people in the Old Testament do to please you? How little I do, and how short is the time I give to prepare myself for the reception of Holy Communion. I'm neither recollected nor free from distractions. Right? Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why we have to constantly take the name of God. God is our perfection. God is our nature. God is who we really are. The rest of this distraction, absolutely true. There's nothing there for us. Nothing at all. Certainly no unworthy thought should arise, nor should my mind be occupied with any created thing. Indeed, it is not an angel I am about to receive into my heart, but the Lord of the angels, right? So we should not have our mind. This is the height of meditation right here. This is samadhi he's describing. Samadhi is when the mind is not occupied by any created thing. Nothing that has an expiration date is in the mind. In samadhi, you are completely focused on that which has no other, that which has no end, that which is immortal and free and constant and unchanging. There is no created thing in that mind. What a vast difference there is between the Ark of the Covenant with its relics and your most precious body with its incomparable virtues. Right. And this is true. And you can even go even farther, that the Ark of the Covenant is an external manifestation of an internal reality. We are the Ark of the Covenant, and we carry within us the very image of God, the very presence of God, right? And it leads us to victory in all things if we keep our mind on that image of God, the presence of God. We cannot be defeated if we carry that before us in our life. Your most precious body with its incomparable virtues, for those sacrifices of the law prefigured what was to come, while the sacrifice of your body is the fulfillment of those ancient sacrifices. Yes, that was God demonstrating there in the life of the Christ that there is nothing that the divine is unwilling to do to get you home, to bring you back, to bring you into the knowledge of your true nature. That God, through the Christ, through his life, his Leela as the Christ, demonstrated to us that we weren't the only ones sacrificing. Through the Old Testament, it was always the people sacrificing to God, always repenting and sacrificing to God. And God even asks, for, is it Isaac's son? Asks him, who is it that gets Abraham sacrifices his son Isaac, right? Or is asked to. And it's a very important moment in the Old Testament when Abraham is asked to sacrifice Isaac to God, and Abraham is willing to do it. He goes to slay his son. God asked that of him, and he was willing to do it. And Jesus was God turning around and saying, I also will sacrifice to you anything that is necessary to give you freedom, to bring you home, that you might be that prodigal daughter, that prodigal son, right? That you return home to me. You wake up in the pig's pen, right? That's where the prodigal son wakes up literally in a pig's pen. If you've seen a pig's pen, not a good place to wake up. Not a good place to go to sleep either. But you wake up in the pig pen. So he understood. He woke up in that pig pen and he said, look what I am without God. Look what I am without my father, without my family. Look what I am. But he doesn't get up and clean himself up. He gets up and goes home. And his father sees him approaching and grabs the nicest jacket he can find, takes the ring off his finger, and literally runs down the road to meet his son and gives him everything. Gives him the ring, the signet ring, his authority, his approval, his right to the family. Gives him that beautiful jacket, which covers all of the pig filth that he'd been rolling in and all of the mistakes that he'd made. Brings him home and then does what? Throws a giant party for him, a giant celebration. You see, this is how we fall in love with God. We see these accounts, his expressions, his stories about the depth of that love, about the depth of that commitment to us. That's where we find our purchase. That's where we find our confidence. That's where we find our self-esteem. Not because of what I've made of myself, but because of what I am, because God has made me that way, right? He's placed his own image within me. Why then do I not seek your adorable presence with ardent longing, right? How are we lost in our bad habits? The years of looking for pleasure in our bodies and our minds. And we can see the worthlessness of it. We can see the temporary nature of all of it. And yet the habits drive us back. The vain hope that maybe something will be there drives us back. He says, how can we be like this? And why do I not prepare myself with meticulous care to receive this most holy sacrament, since the ancient patriarchs and prophets, kings and princes too, together with all the people, displayed such affectionate devotion for divine worship? King David, that most devout ruler, danced before the Ark of the Covenant with all his might when he remembered all the favors bestowed on his forefathers. He made various kinds of musical instruments and composed psalms. These he ordered to be sung joyfully by all the people, and he also sang them himself to the accompaniment of his harp when inspired by the grace of the Holy Spirit. You see, what was his inspiration? It was grace. Because if you look at the life of David, it's not a clean one. He was a murderer. He was an adulterer. He was a schemer, but he was loved of God. Why? Because he knew the grace of God and he always returned to it. He always found his way back to it. And so that you see, it is not what we do with our lives that makes us worthy. It's that grace that belongs to us as a gift from our Father, from our beloved, that makes us worthwhile, that gives us value. He taught and exhorted the people to praise God with all their heart, blessing him in unison every day. If the people of ancient times showed such reverence, such devotion to God in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, how much greater should be the reverence and devotion to your presence in the blessed sacrament paid by me and all Christian people, as also in the receiving of the precious body and blood of our Lord, the Christ. Or you can even take this down to just that presence of God within us, that understanding that we are the ark of the covenant. We carry the covenant within us. All of our righteousness comes from that covenant. All of our hope comes from that covenant. All of our cleanliness comes from that covenant. And it all came from God to us, right? And so he's saying, if in the face of this Ark of the Covenant, people would bow down, would fall on their faces, how much more should I, being in the presence of that very image of God that was symbolized in the Ark, but is realized in me, in this body, how much more reverence should I be able to find? How much more surrender, just how much more satisfaction in just falling flat and just laying in that divine serenity, that divine peace, that all-encompassing presence. How much more? Many people travel great distances to visit the relics of saints and marvel on hearing of their remarkable deeds. They gaze upon magnificent churches dedicated to them, paying homage to their blessed remains, wrapped with silk and covered with gold. But you, my God, you, the saint of saints, the creator of all things, the Lord of angels, are here present on the altar before me. People are often excited by curiosity and novel sights, and so they return with little inclination toward amendment of life, especially when their pilgrimages are made hurriedly, going from one place to another, and no thought is given to true contrition for their sin. In the sacrament of the altar, you are wholly present, God and man, and here also in all its abundance is the fruit of eternal salvation. As often as you are received worthily and devoutly, to this sacrament we are drawn, not by curiosity, not by levity, not by sensuality, but by a firm faith, a devout hope, and a pure charity. Right? So we find it by a firm faith in what? A firm faith in an unconditioned love, a firm faith in a bottomless grace, in a devout hope, right? Not letting our hope be diminished by our condition, not letting our hope, the brightness in our eyes be clouded by the mistakes, by the foolishness, by the ignorance, and by a pure charity, which is what? An open response, letting that image of God express freely through us by surrender. Right? This is how we come to it. This is how we find that knowledge, that peace. All right. Let's stop there for tonight.